Hey, what's up everyone? It is great to be back doing a video again. As you can tell, we're not in Southeast Asia. We are back in the US. This is our lovely dog, Bella. Say hi.
Hi everyone.
What really we wanted to fill you in with what has been going on over, I guess, really the past year. We were putting out nice little videos every week or so, and then all of a sudden we were in an accident.
So this story starts, we were on the island of Koh Samui in Thailand. It was our last excursion that we were going to be going on, so we wanted to book one last boat trip.
And I think we had like 6 days left before we were heading back to the US.
Scheduled flight home, yeah. At this time, we still have our youngest daughter, who's 17 at the time, that you may have seen her pop in and out on a few videos, but we also have her boyfriend Marcus with us at this time. We head out on this excursion, which is about an hour-and-a-half boat ride out to the area that we were trying to get to. Sea conditions were pretty good. There really wasn't any issues. We were sitting up on the bow or the front of the boat when the boat took on just a couple waves. Kind of the ones that when you're kind of going on a speed boat, just kind of bounce you up. Your bottom kind of lifts the seat a little bit and you bounce back down and everybody laughs. And that's really what happened. So we hit one, then we hit a second one, and then we hit the third one. And the third one threw me completely up into the air. And to be honest, I have no clue. Stop licking. I have no clue how I did not actually go over the side of the boat. And when I came back down on my seat and landed on my bottom, but instantly felt and heard a cracking in my back, and the pain was just immense. I fell to my knees, and Jason was actually sitting on the other side of the boat directly across from me, and I just grab his legs and I'm screaming, and the only thing I could think to say was that I broke my back. Like, I just knew that something was really wrong. At that point, there's a lot of missteps, and we're not naming names or anything like that. I truly believe that this was a freak accident, and accidents happen, and it's unfortunate. But I'm not even sure that the boat captain at that time even realized how severe it was. I actually had to scream out to slow the boat down, to stop. Like, we were still going pretty fast. At that point, I think everybody really thought that I had just
maybe cracked your back, or just, not cracked it like in that, but people, she likes to crack her neck and her knuckles, and maybe she just came down on it weird and
or knocked the wind out of me.
I think in hindsight, I wanted to not believe what she was saying, even though she was saying it. I know that was horrible to do that, but
I don't think I wanted to believe it.
It was like, no, you're okay, you're all right, and it's tough, I'm like, no, maybe you just cracked your back really hard, or you came down on it, and but unfortunately that was not the case.
No. So at that point, once everything got stopped, the boat slows down. So obviously, being in healthcare a long time, I know that the number one thing is if there's a suspected spine injury, you never move the patient. But we did, and so they got me up and laid me down, still on the bow of the boat, but on the bench, and I'm laying there and I'm thinking, maybe it's not as bad. Can I sit up? And I kept trying, but I could not move. I could feel my legs, I could wiggle my toes, but once I was in a laying down position, I was just unable to move my body anymore. So the unfortunate part is, like, through all the commotion of trying to get me up and lay me on a bench, the rest of the tour went on. So, obviously being out in the water, this is going to be a water adventure. So now everybody's out in the water, far enough away from the boat that it really isn't feasible to get everybody back on. So for about an hour or so, I'm laying there, and Jason has a towel draped over top of my head because the sun is scorching down. At this point, I'm getting really, really scared that something's wrong. An hour or so passes, and everybody gets up on the boat. kind of the tour operator or manager of the company, something to that extent. He recognized at that point that this was probably serious. He calls in to the mainland of Koh Samui and says, like, look, this is what's going on. They suspected that this was a spine injury. And so at that point, we had to decide what was going to be the best plan of action. So now that's when they're trying to figure out, what do we do? We've got all these other people on the boat. They were supposed to go to another area after that. So originally their thought was to try to transfer me from this boat to another boat to take me back so that their tour could go on. Again, another highly misstep here. But when I was unable to be moved at all, that just really wasn't an option. So then they said, then where do we take her? Do we do the massive boat ride all the way back to Koh Samui? Or do we try to take her to a closer island?
And a much smaller island.
Definitely wasn't going to have the health care that I needed. And thankfully, whoever they had called back on the island of Koh Samui recognized that and was like, no, you can't take her there. You have to bring her back. And so everybody gets back up onto the boat. Jason's at my head side trying to keep me covered from the sun. An announcement was made that there had been an injury. It was more severe than we anticipated. We have to go back into land and we need somebody to help stabilize her. And, Jason couldn't be at all ends. I really needed him kind of next to me for moral support, not necessarily for just bracing me. And so this guy steps in. His name is Odin. And he says, I'll brace her. And he's kind of this big burly guy, and he wedges himself between both sides of the bow of the boat and kind of braces me in there so that I don't roll and tip and move throughout the transition.
And again, we had another hour and some ride back.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not like the U.S. where if this would have happened, they would have probably called in the Coast Guard and they would have come down and lifted her out and took her to the hospital. Like, I mean, they don't have that kind of access, I guess, or are able to facilitate resources to do something like that. So, obviously we didn't quite know what the extent is, and it kind of gets a little bit worse as it goes on. And so here she is with what we don't even assume, we think maybe is a broken back. And we're on a boat ride an hour back. I mean, I couldn't imagine, if the seas were choppy.
Yeah.
I mean, what would we have done at that point? I mean, what do you do, I guess? I don't know. It was, but Odin, we thought the whole time Odin was
somebody that worked for the company.
Yeah. Right? He was just some dude.
Yeah, he was just some guy who, no medical background. Odin and I have kept in touch over this last year, and he works in finance. He works for a bank. He has zero medical care experience, but you know what? He stepped in, he saw a need, and he really provided a comedic relief.
Yeah.
In this situation, he was asking me, just tons of funny questions, and well, you've had kids, you can do this, and asking about our family. Funny but embarrassing. I had to pee, but in hindsight, that was actually a good thing because I had not lost control of my bladder at that point. But he's like, just let it roll. And I'm like, of course I can't do that, But, he really, really provided some comedy to try to take our mind off the situation at hand. Hour and a half-ish back, we make it to land. And what's different here is, most boats, or at least I've been on here in the U.S., you tend to dock to a dock. Here we dock to sand. So now the hard part is that we've got the ambulance here. We've got Thai medical care here. They've prearranged all of this. They come on and they bring a backboard, but they don't have access to both sides of me. They only have access to one because I'm pressed up against the other side of the boat. So here they're having to roll me and slide a backboard under me. It was excruciating. I was screaming, crying. There's just no words to describe the amount of pain. And funny now, but the only thing that the Thai medical care would say is don't cry.
They said this multiple times through our adventure through their medical care.
Please don't cry.
And you got to remember too that this is a little speedboat. It's not anything huge, and there's only a small area to get from the back between the console and to the front. Yeah. It was tight. It was tight.
Tipping and turning, and then of course terrified I'm going to fall off, and I'm screaming because they've got me strapped on, but I don't feel secure. And there really wasn't a way for like Jason or Odin to help because
there's no room.
There's no room. Like they're trying to get me off, and we're not docked to a dock. We're docked to sand, so they have to get me through the back of the boat, down into where the water is, and back up the bank in the sand to the ambulance. So, to say the least, it was an experience. Looking back on it now, this is where I think we should have been a bit more proactive in the care in which we were going to receive. And let me just preface it with everything that the care we received along the entire way was incredible. I have zero regrets about the care that I received while in Thailand. However, at that point, I think we knew that this was probably something pretty serious, and so we should have demanded to go to a hospital that was going to have all of the appropriate care at that time. Versus the company took me to the most local Thai hospital,
and it was for financial reason. They're like, that's what it basically turned out.
And they told us.
And they told us that they're like, well, if you go to the big hospital, they're going to want to do surgery on you and charge you for this and this. So it was truly financial reasons that they took us to this particular hospital. Now, this is one of those hospitals where you hear people say, I was waiting for a chicken to run through. And don't get me wrong, these people gave us great care. They were great. They were fine.
For what they could offer.
For what they could offer. In the U.S., when you go into the emergency room, they take you back to into your own bed, and then you have an emergency room waiting area for the family and all. I'm standing right next to her bed, and they rolled somebody out that was just all, I don't know, beat up or whatever, was injured, and they're out there doing stitches, right? Where people are walking in and out. So it was definitely an experience. But again, we got good care there for what they could offer.
Yeah.
So,
and I still think that like the communication, there was very little English that was spoken at this hospital. It really was more for locals.
It was.
And so the communication that was given from the company we were with to them, I don't think they really alluded to maybe how severe of an injury this could be. Because I was taken off the backboard. I think they went with the information that they had. And had it been somewhere else, I don't think they would have just taken somebody's word for it. They would have left me on a backboard.
But I don't think they even knew really either. These are probably not the injuries that they get, right? I mean, when you think about, and I'm just referencing U.S. just because that's where we're from and that's what we're used to. But I mean, if you go in and you have a suspected back injury, I mean, they've got a neck brace on you. They've got you on a backboard. Like, they're putting you right into x-rays and all that stuff right away. You're not moving,
Yeah.
Because of that. But here, it's a little different. They take you off of the backboard. She's like, I've got to use the restroom. Obviously, she can't get up. So now they're trying to put a bedpan up underneath her.
So they're like, lift your hips. I couldn't. I physically, it wasn't that I didn't want to, but I couldn't. It wasn't even an option. And
so we finally got it. They finally came in, took her out for an x-ray, and of course you're in the medical field.
Oh, thank goodness. So my background is in x-ray, and every bump and every movement was just excruciating. And so they take me from the stretcher to the x-ray table, but keep in mind I don't have a backboard, so they're having to put sliders on me. If they had just left me on the backboard, it would have made life so much easier. But so they do the one image where you're laying on your back, and now they need to roll me onto my side. And at this point, I'm getting really scared, and I'm like, I know something's very wrong. And I knew that the more that people move me, how serious this could be. And so I just kept saying no, like I'm not rolling, and I kept reaching for like the tube head and telling them to do what's called a cross table. I'm like, no, take the tube. Like, I know you can do this where I can stay laying on my back. And it took a few times, but then they finally understood what I was trying to say, and they did that. And thank goodness nobody moved me more. At that point, and there's no HIPAA here, right? So, like, there's no HIPAA. So, like, they have my images pulled up on just a monitor in the main little ER area with a couple of beds, and he's taken a picture of it. And what bit I know just from the standard x-ray. We gained a lot more information from CT and MRI, but from the x-ray we knew that this was bad. Fortunately, I have a lot of connections in the US from where I've worked with doctors. It's like 3 a.m. US time, and so he's calling one of the doctors being like, Jess has been in an accident, like we're going to start sending you images. And so it was really, really great to have some type of representation from the US, somebody looking at it here, providing some guidance as well, just because we were at such a local hospital. I did stay there one night?
2 nights. So they had this hospital, and then they had a second hospital that they called, that was more westernized.
It's Bangkok International.
Yeah.
But it was a satellite to the main Bangkok International in Bangkok.
It's still a small hospital.
Still small, but they have more care.
They could do CT,
MR.
and MRI. So basically we stayed at this one hospital for 2 days, and they said, we can't do anything for you, so you need to go to another hospital on the island.
So maybe we should let you know, like, I'm sure the question would be, why did you stay at this hospital for 2 days and not just move on to the other one? And so we are going to make another video, because I do think it's so important for people that are getting out there traveling when it comes to international health insurance. And so thankfully we had traveler's insurance that covered us in these countries. And that really it was phenomenal care. We will put out another video around that. But there's a process.
There's steps. It's not like you just go. So in the U.S., if you're injured and you don't have insurance, they work on you, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if you're foreign or not. If you're injured, you go to the hospital, and if you need back surgery or you need some kind of stitches or something, you don't have insurance, they just do it. Here it's a little different, and it may not be that way with locals, but with foreigners, they want to make sure that they're getting paid before they're doing anything,
and that they're going to get paid,
and that they're going. And that was the thing, is that a lot of people got stuff done and then they left, and nobody got paid. So a little bit of that, but like you said, we'll do that in another video. So
that's why we were there for 2 days. And at that point, we had actually met with. It wasn't the ER doctor, but it was like maybe a spine doctor who said, he's like, I can't help you, but this is severe. We got to get you to the next hospital. But it was just getting through the paperwork and the logistics around the insurance. But what they did tell me at that time, laying in the bed, they were like, do not move. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like we know it's bad. We don't know how bad. I'm laying on a regular bed, no backboard, and they're just like, don't move. At this point, I will just go into it, it's so embarrassing. But at this point, like, obviously you have to go to the bathroom. So I did demand a catheter at that point, like just constantly having to urinate on yourself.
And I think did you do that in the ER? I
had to use like a diaper.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't use a bedpan. But knowing that I was going to be here, and obviously there was going to be multiple occurrences of needing to use the restroom, I just did not want. And I knew this was not going to be like, oh, let's check you out and you get to go home. I'm going to be here a while. So they went ahead and did a catheter, and that's just kind of telling you ahead of time of a little bit of what's to come. But so 2 days later, we get the approval to get transferred to Bangkok International Hospital on the island of Koh Samui by ambulance. Now I've got to get back on backboards and stretchers and everything. We get to this hospital, which to me reminded me very much of a Western-ish hospital. There's computers in each room. There's very separated ER beds. It wasn't like a trauma unit by no means, but they kind of started all over. We did CT, we did MR, and then that is when we realized that I was in a lot of trouble. So at that point, we're told the severity. So what actually happened was I wound up with 4 compression fractures, which is terrible, but not serious. I could have walked away with a back brace and some physical therapy and went on my way. But my T12 vertebrae was actually a burst fracture that was leaving a piece of bone about 2 millimeters from my spinal cord. So if I were to sit up or anything, I was at risk of being paralyzed.
So now that we say this, and you go back and look at everything that happened prior to this, I mean, it's
a miracle.
It's a miracle, right? Because she had fallen onto the floor of the boat. We lifted her up, or she got up. I don't know how, and then putting on a backboard being taken off, bedpan, X-ray, like all this stuff. How like lucky.
Yeah, very thankful. Could still wiggle my toes, move my legs. All of that was good. So we spent
at least another 3, 4, 5 days in that hospital, and again,
3 or 4 days.
They couldn't do anything for us. But we had
at this point they're trying to figure out what to do. Like they could have operated there.
But I was told that they were going to cut your whole back open.
They're like, we met with the spinal surgeon there, and he's like, look, like, I'm going to have to do a full open surgery. We don't have the capabilities to do, like, more laparoscopic or high-end surgeries here. He's like, the best thing we can do is get you to Bangkok. So really, at this point, I think they're trying to get me stabilized. They're trying to get all the lab works and all the imaging that needs to be done and figure out how to get me from Koh Samui to Bangkok, which was going to be airlifted. But again, going back to that insurance piece, there was a process. And that part was a tough process. Being air flighted out was not the easiest to coordinate with insurance. There was definitely between language barriers, being in another country, calling a U.S. based company. It was a bit difficult. There was multiple people involved in the different hospitals. And keep in mind, this entire time, we still have our daughter and her boyfriend here. So they're having to navigate Thailand and food. He's having to go check on them at the hotel and then come back to the hospital because he would spend the night with me there. It was an ordeal. And then, of course, we had to let, family know and let our kid know, which was very scary for her, too. We actually had a flight going from Koh Samui back to Bangkok. And it worked out that Jason and the kids were able to keep that same flight. The airlift for me to go out was going to take place the same day. So the thought was, you guys get there, you get the kids situated in a hotel, make your way to the hospital where you'll meet me.
But it was just an itty bitty plane. It was small. Like they said, one person. So other than her, there was one family member that could go. And we're like, no, we got 3 family members. And now I understand why they said only one. They had to tilt you to the side and twist you around.
It was unbelievable. So when him and the kids were taken off, they actually saw my tiny plane arrive and sitting there at the airport waiting to airlift me off. So they take off, they get me. Thankfully, they gave me even stronger pain medication at this point because I had to have aviation doctors and nurses and so forth. But yes, I mean, it was, I have no clue how they got that stretcher on that plane. And by that point, they had given me enough medication that I was kind of in and out. It was only like a 30, 45 minute flight.
But you said it was rough. It wasn't rough. Smooth.
No, it wasn't smooth. I mean, this tiny plane. So they get me. Now, keep in mind, it's been, 5, maybe 6 days?
6 days or something. And we're being told, yep, you're flying out. We got everything. And I'm on the airplane with the kids getting ready to take off. And she calls me up and she says, they're not going to let me fly out of here. They're still waiting on payment from such and such.
From our insurance company.
From the insurance company. I'm like, Jess, it's fine. We'll figure it out. We'll get you out of it. Just pay it. We'll put it on a credit card. We'll pay it.
Keep in mind, the air flight out was going to be roughly $14,000 without insurance. So again, you need international health insurance. And so the flight crew was there, and the doctor came in, he talked to me, and then they're saying, we're trying to figure it out. We don't have clearance. And I'm holding on to this guy's hand, begging. I'm like, do not leave without me. I was terrified. And I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but they granted the approval. And so we take off, medicine, 45-minute flight. And once I got to Bangkok International Hospital, everything was, to me, no different than I would expect if I'd been injured here. Even though the accident happened 6 days ago, they rolled me into a trauma unit. They're hooking me up to IVs. They're doing ultrasounds. They're checking my eye functions. And I was just like, this happened 6 days ago. Why is this a trauma all of a sudden? I was still kind of numb to what was happening. We met our doctor at that time who met us maybe an MRI again or something like that.
And again, we still have been in contact with doctors back in the U.S.
Yes,
and
they
told us, they were like, if you can get to Bangkok, we are okay. Because we had 2 choices. We could either have surgery in Bangkok or we could fly her home on a stretcher, basically.
But I had to fly a Thai doctor.
And then we'd have to take a Thai doctor, nurses with us, and fly her home, where in the U.S. we could get medical treatment there.
But there was a lot of risk with that, given
Yes.
the severity of the injury. You know, being jarred around, you know, tough landings on airplanes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there was just more risk. And not only that, delaying that, we were on a slightly race against the clock. The longer that you go without fixing the bone, you know, they start to try to heal themselves and they heal incorrectly. And then we have bigger problems. So at this point, given my condition, I was admitted into ICU.
And you got there and they were getting ready to do surgery, but you had a UTI.
Yeah.
So again,
thanks to the catheter. So that was kind of what I was telling you before, right? Like that was to come, and I mean that it happens. But now we were forced
delayed
with,
again.
you know, dealing with the infection, but couldn't have surgery until that was cleared up. So we were delayed probably another 2 days.
2 to 3 days, something like that.
Before I could.
But I mean, it
have
was
surgery.
crazy because every day, and this went on for the whole time that we were there. Every day we saw all kinds of doctors.
I would say between 6 and 8.
Like, I mean, we saw
not the technician, not the technologist, not the nurse.
Yeah.
I'm talking about physical MDs.
I didn't know that there was even a pharmacy doctor, but apparently over there is.
That would be called a pharmacist.
Oh, well, the pharmacist, the pharmacist then came in every single day to make sure she was doing okay. And then you had, you know,
we had our infection
control. Like,
I had 2 surgeons, which my primary surgeon,
Yeah.
we come to find out, was actually Jacksonville, Florida, U.S. base trained,
Yeah.
Thai national, and he was phenomenal. And his assistant surgeon, which is actually the one that dealt with this the most.
And it was funny because they always said, this is what they do in the U.S. This is what they would do in the U.S.
And we didn't care. We just needed this fix. Like, we didn't care what the standard was at this point. Like, we had made the decision to stay in Thailand, have the surgery, so whatever needed to happen just had to happen. Yeah, so we have the surgery. It was successful.
I think it was like 6 hours, maybe?
It was,
I don't remember. It seemed like a very long time
maybe
for me.
the surgery wasn't that long, but between getting me back to short stay and going through that, from the time I left you till I came back, I was not coherent enough post-surgery, so I will let Jason kind of tell. Because up until this point, it had been managed with very heavy pain medication, but still managed as long as I did not move. But post-surgery...
It was pretty rough. Okay. So they brought her back, and they finally let me come into the ICU. And I mean, it just... I don't know if I've ever felt so hopeless or helpless, but she just sat there and looked at me screaming, I'm in so much pain. Why won't anybody help me? And don't... You know, they've got her on a pain medicine pump, and it was... Fentanyl. In the U.S., we use morphine. Right? On most stuff. Most of the pumps are morphine, but here it was fentanyl. And, you know, and they were like, I'm like, man, she screamed, you got to do something. You got to give her something else for pain. And this is where the nurses got pissed at me. But I'm like, you know, you got to do something. You got to get her pain under control. You have to do something. And the doctor looked at me and said, I don't know that I can give her anything else without overdosing her. I was like, you got to give her something. So he called up morphine and Narcan with the morphine, and they gave her the morphine, and
I think it was just the cusp of whether I overdosed or not.
Yeah, because her eyes, as soon as they shot it in, her eyes went from glazed to super glazed. You could just see it instantly, and you know, you can imagine somebody sticking rods up through your muscles and...
Well, here's the thing, right? So what was going to happen in Koh Samui was that they were going to split my back all the way down the center. Here, they did a more advanced technique, similar to what we would do here in the U.S., and they did 8 holes, just where the screws were going to go, and then they ran through there. So there was multiple incisions into the muscle, and then having to weed the rod through there and screws. So the best that I can think is I was in so much pain post that was because the muscles were just so tense. That by the time I woke up the next day, I did not have that pain anymore.
Yeah. It was rough. It was definitely rough.
They didn't let him come in early the next
No,
day.
they did not like me the next... They didn't like me, but I mean...
Because he was staying really late, coming in really early against their hours, and they were letting him do that. But that next morning, I called and I'm like, why are you not here yet? And he said, no, I'm here. I'm sitting outside. They won't let
They
me
won't
until
let
7.
me in until 7. Because I was getting up there like 5:30 in the morning, to sit with her all day. But no, it was definitely, it was tough. It was definitely tough emotionally, mentally. I'm sure for her as well, for me to see that physically as well. But you didn't stay in ICU too long after that. They moved you to...
No, it was really just another day
or so.
As soon as they made me get up for the first time. That first day, they wanted me to get up, and I just didn't. And the assistant surgeon came in, and he said, you're going to get up tomorrow. He's like, you don't have a choice. And I think that's the best thing, is that they just have to get you up and moving. But I was just terrified. I was absolutely terrified. So physical therapy came in the next day. And the only thing I had to do that day was sit up on the edge of the bed and stand and like march in place like 10 times. Like that was the extent of physical therapy that I could do at that point. But they got me up and we did it. So that kind of got me out of ICU, so that now he wasn't having to have this terrible commute. Our kids have went home. I'm in a standard room, and you're able to stay throughout the night. And private room, huge room.
Yeah, it was. So, then of course we had quite a few days of physical therapy, and so it would. Oh, but what about the pain where they come in and do the?
Oh yeah, so
that was kind of neat.
Kind of what I understand, it's a little bit of a different thought process, is that they believe that you can't heal if you're in pain, so they go kind of above and beyond with a lot of measures, and maybe it's because I've never been injured that severely here. But I mean, I had cryotherapy every day. I had shock therapy every day. I had ultrasound therapy every day. I had physical therapy where I got up out of bed twice a day, like the assistants that did the physical therapy. So I mean, I was constantly getting some type of treatment to alleviate the pain. They always want to know what the pain level was and how long it lasted post-treatment, and did anything help, and which side was the worst. And then of course I still had my pain pump that I was able to hit ever so many minutes.
Often. And I think something that we also left out, and I think later on became more painful. I don't want to say more painful than your back, but it was something that you noticed a lot too, is that she also broke her butt bone.
Which was never, I mean, we never talked about it.
No.
I mean, given the severity of the accident, it just makes sense. But it wasn't till I actually had to get up and sit that I'm like, why does this part hurt so bad? So then, of course, they go back and they're like, well, it's because you broke your butt bone too. So that made sense, and we got a donut for that to try to go home. But I'll just say that the physical therapy, the kindness of the staff, there's no words to express the gratitude I have for.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm gonna cry. For everything that they did for us. I could walk. I was getting to go home. We still had a few hoops to jump through. It wasn't just as easy as you can get discharged. I could have, and we could have stayed and continued physical therapy there in Thailand. At that point, I was ready to go home. So we had to meet with an aviation doctor, and so I had to stay until I could sit like in a chair for an hour. And the only way, I always wanted to book first class. No, not first class.
It's like
business class. I didn't want to have to do it this way, but the only way they would release me was with a business class purchase seat, because I wasn't able to sit up that long. So it was pretty much just for takeoff and landing that I had to be able to sit, which is why they required the hour increment. And then so the aviation doctor had to sign off, and they actually asked for that at the airport. They wouldn't let me pass security without the aviation doctor documents. So we booked them happily, ready to go home. And here's kind of the final hiccup that we'll cover a little bit more in the insurance video, but here we are, like 6 a.m., ready to go to the airport. We're ready to leave, and all of a sudden, like, the treasurer comes up, and we owed them nearly $15,000. And I'm like, wait a second, we have insurance, we've not received a bill thus far, like, why do we owe you this money? And it's just because of the backlog system. There's always a promise to pay, but then the money comes in, but they won't let you leave. They have our passports.
Yeah. I think they did, yeah.
So we couldn't leave if we wanted to, so we had to pay the $15,000 and then go back through insurance to get that. But we got to fly home. We got to fly business class. We had kind of the red red carpet treatment between wheelchairs.
Not that that's how we wanted to get it, but
hey, but you know what? If you're gonna get it, take it while you can.
We were getting pushed all the way up to the front, and we didn't have to wait in lines for anything as far as like going through lines, customs, or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we've been home since January 2023, and there's been a lot of recovery, a lot of still hospital visits, and we'll get into that as well on the next video. But we just kind of wanted to fill you guys in on what has kind of been happening to us and what happened why we just quit vlogging all of a sudden.
So like you said, I'm doing well. I'm still not 100%, but we're getting there. Very, very glad for where we're at. So really what's to come? If you're interested in understanding about international health insurance and what the options are and costs and just the process we went through, how it works, stay tuned to the next video. And one, we wanted to update everybody, but two, like, we really kind of want to pick this back up again. We have a few trips coming up. By the time you see this, we will probably already be in Indonesia again. So there's going to be some more videos that come out. They're definitely not going to be weekly. We are back in the U.S. We're back working for a period of time. But there's some exciting trips and things that we want to bring you along with. So stay tuned for some upcoming videos, and we appreciate you watching this one.
Guys, don't forget to like this video, subscribe. Please watch some of our other ones if you find this one informative and entertaining. And we will see you next time.